Whoopsie and Whopsie!
A Christmas Carol. Once there was a tight-fisted, grasping, greedy man named Ebenezer Scrooge. His heart was as hard as an old flint and as cold as ice. Nobody ever stopped old Scrooge on the street to say hello. No neighbor ever called out, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" Even the beggars steered clear of him. They knew there was no point in begging from Ebenezer Scrooge. On a cold, bleak, foggy Christmas Eve, old Scrooge was at work, as always. His poor clerk, Bob Cratchit, shivered in the next room, for Scrooge was too cheap to pay for more coal for the fire. Late in the afternoon, two men came into the shop. "Good afternoon, sir," said one of them. "It is the holiday season. Won't you give some money to help provide for the poor?" "Are there no prisons for them?" asked Scrooge. "Yes, of course," said the man. "But you see, sir, we are raising money so that the poor may have meat and drink. A little charity for Christmas. How much will you give, sir?" "Not a penny," said Scrooge. "Good afternoon, gentlemen." When closing time came, Scrooge went in and frowned at his clerk, Bob Cratchit. "I suppose you'll be wanting the entire day off on Christmas," he growled. "Yes, sir," Cratchit replied meekly, "if it is agreeable." "It is not agreeable," said Scrooge. "Why should I pay wages and get no work in return?" "It's only once a year," noted the clerk. "Very well," said Scrooge at last. "You may have your day off, but you had better come in even earlier the next morning to make up for it." "I will, sir. Thank you, sir," said Bob Cratchit. "And a Merry Christmas to you, sir." "Christmas? Bah, humbug," grumbled Scrooge as he left. Through the frost and fog, Scrooge made his way home. As he approached his front door, he stopped and stared. In the middle of the door, where he expected to see a doorknob, he saw a face. It looked like the face of his old partner, Jacob Marley. But Marley had been dead for 7 years. Scrooge blinked his eyes and the face vanished. "Bah, humbug," said Scrooge. He unlocked the door and walked in. Scrooge lit a candle. He changed into his robe and slippers. He was about to fix his dinner when he heard something. It was a clanking sound. It sounded like someone was dragging heavy chains over the floor. Then, something amazing happened. A spirit walked in. It passed right through the door. The spirit was dragging a large chain that was wrapped around his body. "Who are you?" called Scrooge. "Ask me who I was," replied the ghost. "Who were you then?" said Scrooge. "In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley." "Jacob, is it really you?" asked Scrooge. "How can this be? Why are you in chains?" "Hear me," cried the ghost. "I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link. I cared only about money. I did not care for my fellow man. You are making your own chain now, Ebenezer. You care too much for money and too little for your fellow man. I have come to warn you. You must change before it is too late. There is still a chance for you to escape my fate. Tonight you will be haunted by 3 spirits, the ghost said. Then it vanished. Scrooge got into bed and waited nervously. When the clock struck 1, a pale hand drew back the drapes that hung around his bed. It was the first spirit. The spirit looked like a child, but at the same time, it looked like an old man. It had white hair, like an old man, but there were no wrinkles on its face. It was dressed all in white. "Who are you?" said Scrooge. "I am the ghost of Christmas past," said the spirit. "Rise and walk with me." The spirit took Scrooge by the hand. The two of them seemed to rise up and pass right through the wall. Suddenly, Scrooge found himself in an old classroom. He knew the place. "I was a boy here," he called. The classroom was almost empty. All of the children were at home for the holidays, all but one. One neglected child sat at his desk. "Why, that's me!" Scrooge blurted out. He sobbed as he recalled his sad, lonely childhood. The spirit showed Scrooge other moments from his past. Scrooge saw himself as a young man and then as an older man. He saw things he had done that were unkind. He saw people he had known and treated poorly. Then the spirit vanished. Scrooge found himself back in his bed again. He heard the clock striking. He saw a bright light. It seemed to be coming from the parlor. He got out of bed and put on his slippers. Then he walked to the parlor door. A voice called his name. "Come in," said the voice with a laugh. "Come in and know me better, man." Scrooge went into the parlor. He saw a large bearded man wearing a loose green robe and a crown of holly. This jolly giant was seated near a great heap of roasted turkeys, apples, oranges, pies, cakes, and puddings. "I am the ghost of Christmas present," said the man. "Come closer. Touch my robe." When Scrooge touched the robe, he found himself moving through the crowded city streets. It was Christmas morning. Scrooge saw smiling faces. He heard people wishing each other a Merry Christmas. Children were singing songs. Adults were hanging holly branches. As the spirit took him from house to house, Scrooge could see people making their Christmas dinners. The spirit showed Scrooge many people. Scrooge saw miners huddled around a fire. He saw sailors on a ship. He saw sick men lying in the hospital and prisoners locked up in jail. Scrooge saw that their lives were hard, but he saw something else as well. He saw that somehow the spirit of Christmas made all of these people happier. It made them cheerful. It made them smile. The spirit led Scrooge to the home of his clerk, Bob Cratchit. The family was sitting down to a meager dinner with only a tiny roasted goose and some potatoes to eat. Yet they seemed as happy as if they had a great feast before them. The happiest of all was the youngest child, a small, frail boy called Tiny Tim, who walked with a crutch. Scrooge saw Bob Cratchit lift his glass and say, "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears." "Merry Christmas," they all called. "God bless us, everyone," said Tiny Tim. Tiny Tim sat next to his father. Scrooge saw how Bob Cratchit held his little son close by his side, as if he feared he might lose him. Scrooge felt a surge of interest in the boy. "Spirit," he said, "tell me if Tiny Tim will live." "I see an empty seat," said the spirit, "and a crutch without an owner. If things remain as they are, the child will die." "No, no, kind spirit," said Scrooge. "Say he will be spared." The spirit did not reply. Instead, it vanished. In its place came a tall, dark spirit, draped and hooded. "Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come?" asked Scrooge. The spirit did not answer. It pointed onward with its hand. Scrooge found himself in a dark house. On the bed, beneath a sheet, lay something cold, still, and lifeless. Scrooge heard 4 men talking outside. "When did he die?" asked the first man. "Last night," said the second. "It's likely to be a very cheap funeral," said the third. "Indeed," added the fourth, "and not well attended, for who will mourn for that man?" Then all 4 of the men laughed. The spirit waved its dark robe. Suddenly, Scrooge was back at Bob Cratchit's house. It was quiet, very quiet. No one spoke. The Cratchit children sat still as stones around the table. Tiny Tim's chair was empty. His crutch was lying on the table. At last, Scrooge heard Bob Cratchit's voice. "I am sure that we shall never forget poor Tiny Tim," Bob Cratchit said softly. "Oh, my dear little child." The spirit waved its dark robe again. Scrooge found himself in a graveyard. The spirit pointed to one of the graves. Scrooge crept toward the grave. Then he stopped. "Tell me, spirit," Scrooge said, "the things you have shown me, are they things that will be? Or are they only things that may be?" The ghost did not speak. He pointed at the gravestone. Scrooge looked at the gravestone, and there he read his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. Scrooge fell to his knees. "Am I that man who was lying on the bed in the dark house?" he cried. The finger pointed, first at the grave and then at Scrooge. "No, spirit, no!" cried Scrooge. The finger was still there, pointing at Scrooge. "Spirit!" Scrooge cried. "Hear me! I am not the man I was before. I will be better. Surely there is still time. Surely you would not show me these things unless there is still a chance to change my life." For the first time, the hand began to shake. "Good spirit," called Scrooge, "have pity on me. Tell me that these things are not carved in stone. Tell me that they will change if I change my life." The hand trembled. "I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year," cried Scrooge. "I will heed the lessons you and the other ghosts have taught me." Scrooge reached out for the spirit with both hands, but the spirit vanished. Scrooge found himself sitting in his own bed with his arms around the bedpost. Yes, the bed was his own. The room was his room as well. Best of all, the rest of his life was his own. There was still time to make himself a better man. Scrooge felt as giddy as a little boy and as light as a feather. He ran to the window. It was a bright, clear morning. The fog had lifted. The sun shone down. Scrooge saw a boy passing in the street. He called out, "What's today, my fine fellow?" "It's Christmas Day, of course," said the boy. "Christmas!" said Scrooge. "Thank goodness, I haven't missed it." Scrooge called down to the boy again. "Do you know that big prize turkey they're selling in the store on the next street?" "You mean the one as big as me?" said the boy. "Yes, that's the one," cried Scrooge. "Run to the store. Tell them to take the turkey to Bob Cratchit's house." He tossed the boy a coin as a reward. Scrooge dressed quickly and rushed into the street. "Merry Christmas!" he cried warmly to the people he met. He patted children on the head and talked with beggars. He found that everything he did gave him happiness. Scrooge went on calling out, "Merry Christmas!" Before long, he ran into the two men who had visited him the day before, collecting for the poor. Scrooge grabbed one of the men and whispered a few words in his ear. "Bless me," said the man. "Are you sure, Mr. Scrooge? Are you really willing to give such a sum of money?" "Yes, yes," cried Scrooge. "Not a penny less. Come and see me." "Indeed I will," said the man. The next morning, Scrooge arrived at work early, before Bob Cratchit. When Cratchit entered, Scrooge tried very hard to put on his old voice. He growled, "Well, what do you mean by coming in at this time of day?" "I apologize, sir," said Bob Cratchit. "I am not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer," barked Scrooge. "Therefore," he said, "I am raising your salary. A Merry Christmas to you, Bob Cratchit." Scrooge was as good as his word. From then on, he helped Bob Cratchit and his family. To Tiny Tim, who did not die, Scrooge became like a second father. Scrooge shared his wealth with other people in need as well. He became as good a man as the good old city knew. From that day onward, it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. May that be truly said of all of us. And, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. Like and subscribe to Whoopsie and Whopsie for more stories. Till the next story, bye-bye!